Hey class, I'm Paul, obviously. I'm your professor. Hopefully the first week went well and you guys are finding your sea legs a little bit. I just wanted to take a real quick couple of minutes today to talk to you about thesis statements. I know for a lot of you, what I'm going to say is review. Stuff you already know, but just in case you don't, it's important to kind of have this early in the semester. And even if you do, it's not bad to review. So I'm going to talk to you about thesis statements. First of all, where they go, and then kind of what their purpose is, how they function, and then and the things you kind of want to avoid when you write them. Okay. So first things first, a thesis statement is like a one sentence contract with your reader. Okay, it's you saying this is what I'm going to talk about, and only this, right? And so it works as preparing your reader for knowing what's coming, but it also works for you as the writer. If you have a good thesis, it will really help your discussion section stay focused. In fact, one of the tricks I like to tell my students is once you have a good thesis, you should write it on a post-it note and just kind of attach it to your computer screen. And then before every paragraph, as you write, go look at the thesis and say, does my thesis justify me talking about this? And if so, then write the paragraph. And if not, well, then probably don't. Right. So it's that one sentence contract, literally, kind of a binding kind of agreement with your reader. And where it goes is very important, right? It always goes in the last sentence of your introductory section, right? That's where your readers, academic readers, are trained to look for it. So if you have it somewhere else in the intro, that's a problem, right? Because then that means something else is where the thesis should be. And the reader will read that and they'll think this is what the paper is going to be about, when it may be about something else, right? And the reader's not going to read too far into your discussion section waiting to find that, right? At some point, if what they think the paper's about is different from what it actually is, they're going to check out. Okay, and losing your reader is one of the most catastrophic things you can do as a writer. You never get them back, right? And then, I don't care how smart you are on page 3 or 4 of your paper, if your reader's gone, it doesn't matter, right? So it's very important to have a very clear thesis and to put it where a reader is trained to expect to see it, right? And it has to be really, really precise and clear, right? The analogy I like to use is like the electric signs in front of a public bus, right? That tells you where the bus is going. And that's essential if you're riding a bus, right? You're not just going to get on a bus and say, hey, let's see where this winds up. I'm sure there are a few people who do that, but they're really weird and we don't talk to them or about them. Most people don't get on a bus unless they know exactly where it's going. Like, for example, if you're familiar with Oklahoma City and it says downtown and you want to go downtown, well, then fine, you'll get on that bus. But if you want to go to Bricktown, you're not going to get on that bus, right? So they have to know this paper is going in a direction that I'm interested in, and I'll read it. And they actually have to know very clearly what the paper is about. And if they don't know, they're not going to read, right? Much like that person wouldn't get on a bus if it doesn't go where they want to go, or if they don't know where it's going, or it's too vague. If it just says Oklahoma City, right? Well, it tells me a little bit. It tells me you're going to that part of Oklahoma, but it doesn't tell me where in Oklahoma City. I'm not going to take the chance. I'm not going to get on that bus, right? And it's the same thing with your reader and a thesis. If they only have a vague sense of what the paper's about, they're not going to continue to read. Why? Well, because you're writing for the general academic reader, right? That's your audience for all papers. It's not me, right? It's not other people in your class, although they are, and I am a general academic reader, but it's anybody, right? Any student, any professor in an academic environment, that's your general audience, right? And they're a lot like you in the sense that they're not going to read something that is not interesting or valuable to them. So if they'll give you the intro, they'll give you that much time, and if they don't have a sense very clearly where this paper's going and that's a place they want to go, they're not going to keep reading, right? And then again, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter how smart you are on page 4 or 5. So that's the second thing, right? I mean, use that bus analogy, right? To give a sense of your reader as precisely as possible. These are the things, these are the arguments I'm going to be presenting in my paper. Speaking of which, just because I use that example, you don't want to be self-aware either, right? You don't want to say, I'm in this paper, I will, right? You want to get the first person out of academic writing completely. Same with second person. All academic writing should be written in third person, right? So Instead of saying this paper is going to be about why hyenas don't make good pets, just make it a statement. Hyenas don't make good pets for these reasons. You don't need to be self-aware like that. Other things to keep in mind about a thesis statement is a thesis statement has to be debatable. Right? It has to be something reasonable people can disagree on. Right? Because if it's not debatable, we don't need your paper. We've got it covered. Right? Water is wet. Got it. No. Or ESPN is a channel for sports fans. It's literally what the S is in ESPN. We know that. That's not debatable. Got it. No one needs that paper. So it has to be something that's debatable. You have to take a position. Right? You can't say, hey, there are good and bad things about public transportation. Right? Well, there's good and bad things about everything. Right? There's good and bad things about this stress ball. Right? And that's not saying anything. You need to take a position. Stress balls are horrible because they do horrible things to carpal tunnel in your hands or whatever. Public transportation is a bad use of taxpayers' dollars. Public transportation is a wonderful use of taxpayers' dollars, right? You actually have to have a position, right? And it has to fit the scope of the assignment, right? I don't specifically do this because of the nature of the compressed course. I'm giving you very specific kind of paper assignments, but if you take Comp 2 here or wherever, you might run into professors who will ban certain topics. Right, gun control and abortion are two great examples. Lots of writing professors ban those topics, and it's not because they're somehow kind of overly sensitive, or they just entrenched in a position. They don't want to hear you. It's not that. It's because the next thing a thesis has to do, it has to fit the scope of the assignment, right? And freshman classes, you're writing 3 to 5 page papers. Right? I know to some of you that might seem like a lot of writing, but it's really not, particularly when you remember it's double-spaced. And so the reason why certain topics get banned is because there's just no way you can do an effective, comprehensive job about those topics in 3 to 5 pages, right? If you were going to write a paper on gun control or abortion or any of these other larger issues and be effective in presenting a new perspective, right? Because if you're not offering a new perspective, we don't need you. We've got all the other perspectives already out there. You can't really do a good job at doing that in 3 to 5 pages. You would need a much bigger canvas, right? And that's why those are topics you might be able to write about and get the junior or senior level kind of college classes, right? So it has to be debatable, has to take a position, and has to fit the scope of the assignment. And the last thing is it has to be a statement, right? It can't be a question. Right? There's a tendency to kind of phrase it, use rhetorical questions as a way of presenting your reader your thesis. And particularly when you get to Comp 2, you're going to learn something called a working thesis or a research question, which is actually phrased as a question as you begin your research. But by the time you write, it has to be a statement. So just keep that in mind, right? That it has to be a statement, right? Hopefully that's a review for all of you. And again, if it's not, and you didn't think a 9-minute video was enough for you to be masters of writing a thesis statement, I totally agree. Relax. As I said in the Brightspace announcement, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. No one expects you to have a thesis statement mastered by the time you write your first paper for me, right? That's one of the things I'm going to be commenting on. And then, of course, you get to revise both papers later in the semester. So if you don't nail the thesis right out of the gate, no worries. I'll respond to it, and then hopefully through revision and maybe reviewing this video again and using office hours to discuss it with me if you still need to. We can figure it out. All right. Hope your summer is going reasonably well and is not too inconvenienced by the fact you're taking this course. And if you have any questions, let me know. We can set up a time to meet during Zoom. And enjoy the rest of your day.